what it makes me do is appreciate the sort of wonder of getting people together in a room to make music.
Hello to you from my home studio. You've come here because hopefully you've enjoyed the performance of I Sing Myself by Shawn Allison, and you want to find out a little bit more about how we did this. When we realized that we were going virtual exclusively for the remainder of the spring semester, we needed to find some music that we could perform in order to maintain that part of our curriculum. One of the issues that I struggled with philosophically, besides the fact that we wouldn't be able to rehearse together and have the community that we're accustomed to when we meet in our rehearsal space each day, is that the music that we had in our folders that we left in the School of Music was not written to be performed in the way that you saw I Sing Myself performed. It was meant to be rehearsed together and performed in a concert space or a place of worship, and was never designed to be recorded by individuals on a multi-track. And so I reached out to my department director, Dr. Christoph Bernacki, who authorized us to commission a work. We reached out to Shawn Allison and gave him almost no time to write it because we were midstream in the semester. But in a very, very swift amount of time, he found a text that we thought worked really well and put a piece of music together that would still challenge us, would still fulfill the elements of the curriculum that we wanted to continue with, but that wasn't so complicated that we were not able to be successful in this endeavor. And certainly, as you'll find out in the interview that I'll have with him later in this video, we all learned a lot in the process. So the first thing we had to have was a piece of music that could support this. The next thing we needed were rehearsal and performance tracks. So we put the music on our Canvas system, on our online learning management portal for students to download. And then Abby Allison and myself created the conductor track, the video that had me conducting the piece of music, although there was no one there. I was conducting thin air. And then Abby put together a series of practice recordings for each voice part: soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and we facilitated some online learning with them. And Abby was really remarkable in even meeting with some students by Zoom or by Skype to help them with parts that they maybe needed to work on. Because of lag time on internet, that became really, really complicated. And that's why a choir singing together on Zoom is not really a thing. You can't get everyone lined up together. But we managed to teach the ensemble the music. And then each individual had one device that played the conductor video. They had the music, and they had another device that recorded their voice. So as they watched the conductor video, as they would in a standard rehearsal or performance, they would breathe, prepare, sing their line, and record it into another device. That file was then uploaded to us, and we used a program called Soundtrap to layer each voice on top of each other. And with that, then we were able to put the piano accompaniment in, and that got us to our finished product. But that is how we will remember this moment, and how we have something archived to remember this time. I want you to enjoy some video clips about the process, and also some of my interview with the composer, Shawn Allison.
Okay, Shawn, thank you for joining and talking about this piece. This has been something that that a few months ago, if we would have told each other we would be doing this, we never would have imagined, I'm sure. So everything happens so quick, and we want to give people a look into the process about it all and how this happened. So when I reached out to you about this project, about wanting to do something for our students so they could keep singing and remember this crazy moment in time and have something musically to look back on it. Walk us through a little bit what you did to get started on the project.
Actually, the thing that didn't take that long, but was probably the most important first step, was finding a text that could work. Everybody remembers this virtual choir thing that Eric Whitaker did starting, I don't even know exactly how many years ago, but it's a while ago. And I remember everybody was aware that it existed, but no one really understood what was being done.
Right. How complicated it really was.
Right, exactly. And essentially we knew something was possible. And so I figured, like, okay, I'll start writing the piece and we'll figure it out by the time I'm done.
That's kind of the story about the whole project. It was, well, let's just get started and hopefully it's going
to move. Try to get something down. And but yeah, I knew that none of this would really mean much if the text didn't have some resonance. I had worked on a big Whitman project a while ago, and I had surveyed almost all of his poems. I mean, like I did a sort of, macro snapshot of like how his output is categorized, like what he covers, what kind of feelings he covers. And he really, more than any other poet that I know of, covers this idea of individuality within the context of American culture. So a togetherness, that everybody is one, people, and that transcends all barriers, which is a striking thing for the time that he was writing. And also that we are all like fiercely individualistic, and that is a defining characteristic of what it means to be American. And I had remembered a bunch of different poems that struck this, and I had a list of like 10 in one night, like after we talked to you that night. Also, public domain was very important.
Right. Yeah, we didn't have a lot of turnaround time.
Sometimes you can wait 6 months for a reply from a poet's estate, and it's annoying. But we didn't have to worry about Walt. So anyway, yeah, we got that going, and I, basically by the next morning, it was like, okay, this is it, and it's 3 lines. Like, one of the things that characterizes all of Walt Whitman's poetry is that it tends to be really long, like immeasurably long. And so it was very important to just be like, take just a little fragment, basically. The first stanza of Song of Myself is what it is. So
when you write a piece of music, you're usually accustomed to a musician or a set of musicians that have rehearsal. If it's a group of musicians, they're together and they rehearse together. And as you put this together, you knew that wasn't going to be the case, that everyone was going to be learning it on their own. There would be some remote, Zoom Brady Bunch sectionals where people could try to learn their part and had rehearsal tracks, but that really everyone had to do their part independently from their room or from their apartment or from their house where they had to move back in with their parents. So how did that impact how you wrote the piece? What went through your process as you got pen to paper?
I wanted my work to be informed by that knowledge, but I didn't want it to completely change what I did. Like, do you know what I mean? On a fundamental kind of level, it's still a piece of music. It's still, there's still, you have to voice things right, and you have to use counterpoint, and you need to do some of this stuff. But at the same time, I did think about rhythmic complexity in terms of entrances. There's only really 1 or 2 places where there's like one voice coming in at a time like this. We had some complaints in the sectionals when Abby and I were working with the singers, where one guy said, there isn't even one bar of 4/4 in this piece. And I tried to make the phrases short, and I didn't want any really extreme range stuff. So like it really, I kept all that fairly conservative. And in general, they're singing together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that maybe was adventurous within this context was doing anything with tempo changes.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been way easier if I had just been like, okay, we're just going to have a click track and, but.
And I'm glad we avoided that too.
Yeah.
All of it, everything that you mentioned from a pedagogical standpoint, because even though it maybe brought some challenges for the students that were recording and learning it, it forced them to use their musicality and their inquisitiveness to figure it out. It wasn't just it wasn't like a karaoke piece where they had to follow the bouncing ball and sing along. Right. They had to do some prep and had to invest some time to make some musical decisions.
And something that I really like about how we did it, that other choirs who are experimenting with this have not done, is have a conducting video that has, and is actually, of course, the only part of this process that involved more than one person being in the same room at the same time.
Right.
It made putting it together on the editing level relatively straightforward. Abby did a tremendous amount of work in getting like T's to line up, mm-hmm. which like we were talking about earlier, you could have taken care of in 30 seconds in a rehearsal and mm-hmm. say, put your T here.
What we miss in the process too is all of the group energy of how phrases are sung and at what volume and what's how much or how little voice to use.
Going along with that, there's an innate, a whole bunch of like thousands of innate decisions that you make as a singer standing in a choir. Because I practiced trying to do some of this on my own before so that we could sort of make sure that it was possible to do and everything. And I remember I had to tell myself to sing out because, I had earbuds on and was watching a thing and had paper. And so there's a lot to worry about. And then, and I knew the parts better than anybody. and I still found myself holding back,
The recording process was challenging for some of the students because they might be in their apartment and they're trying to record it at 10:30 at night or whatever. They don't want to wake their roommates up, or they're back with their parents and their siblings are doing online school and they're trying to squeeze this in. So some of those challenges I know came in some of the notes from the students about how they sang, which is very different than standing together in the Bauer School of Music.
Right. But also for the larger goal of the project being like a virtual choir. If you don't have a conductor, it's not really a choir. Mm-hmm. Without the conductor, it didn't feel like a virtual choir. It felt like a recording project. Oh, and one thing I should mention about the whole challenge of everyone doing this under all sorts of different circumstances at home is that Abby heard some really fascinating things in the background and also went to a great deal of trouble to make sure that we didn't hear like barking dogs and conversations in the background and like stuff like this, which is
a lawnmower
to do. But yeah, and a word about the specific reason that we chose to attempt using Soundtrap. It was just a way of attempting to homogenize the sound of a completely unpredictable number of different electronic devices. Mm-hmm. And so it was a way to sort of regulate the quality, but at the same time, just like any new technology, it creates just as many problems in some ways as it solves. Mm-hmm. And if we had to do something like this ever again, hopefully we don't have to. But if we did, we know some things
Sure.
collectively now that
Yeah.
make it a smoother process. But this is how we learn how to do stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So once everything came together and as you said, through some editing, on Abby's part, and now we've got a finished um, performance of this. What are your thoughts when you listen to it, when you hear it?
Sure.
You tell me what
Uh,
you think about it.
First of all, it sounds like the piece.
Hmm.
Like that's the thing that I think is the most positive outcome for me personally, is like, I know the piece works. Like, it's there, I can hear it. And I really like, I think the emotional aspect of it still works, even though I know that so many of the students were like apprehensive and even hesitant in their singing because of like all the reasons we mentioned earlier. I think even with all of the limitations and sort of static, like the emotional static of this whole time, and the anxiety of all of these students are also working on other online classes, and each one of them is its own source of stress.
Yeah.
you know the I think that still the message of the piece as a whole comes through, and that's what I'm happiest about.
Hmm.
I think we all have something to be proud of in the fact that even with all of this stuff going on, that there's still something that sounds like a piece of music that can communicate something.
Hmm.
I heard the piece, and that's great. Now, in terms of like some other things, I mean, like we said, there were technical problems with multiple students having a hard time getting the different technologies to work together, and get bugs out and stuff like that. And as a result, there were way fewer usable male tracks
Hmm.
than female tracks. I think all of this is an educational
Hmm.
thing, and you can. But what I was actually really pleasantly surprised by, because I didn't honestly know how this was going to work, once you put all of the parts together, um, the the women weren't trying to blend because they had nothing to blend to, right? Um, but they there was it had a choral sound, you
Hmm.
know, and it also made me really excited to hear it with people in the room together, because it was
You
like,
and you and me both.
yeah. And it's like, all right, well, if this works,
Yeah.
but it's going to work a lot better and
Right.
more easily
Yeah.
when everyone's in the same room. Yeah.
What other future aspirations and projects do you have? I mean, did anything make you think about work for the future, whether in this context or in its traditional context from doing this project?
I have a Whitman, um, a small unaccompanied Whitman piece, um, that's like a little prayer that's like 2 minutes long or something like that. And then I have a bigger, much more complicated Whitman setting. And so the idea of doing a Whitman set or something like that, I don't think it would change the way I would do anything, other than if we did another project like this, there are things that I would do to make it smoother, you know, um, maybe on a musical level, but more on a logistical level, right? What it makes me do is appreciate the sort of wonder of getting people together in a room to make music. Like, it's it made me appreciate every single little thing that you do automatically in a room that you had to fabricate on your own when recording by yourself,
Hmm.
you know and the like thousands and thousands of tiny decisions that you don't even know you're making because it's just natural,
Hmm.
you know and when you have to put it together in this artificial context, you know um, the word virtual choir is really a misnomer. It's not a virtual choir. It's a multi-track recording project,
Right.
across distance,
Hmm.
you know so you don't even have the benefit of being in a studio together. That our development as a species is like intrinsically and very directly tied to music.
Right.
So in other words, the part of the brain that controls language developed around the same time as the part of the brain that deals with music. So music and language are like right together, and they are maybe literally what makes us human. And so when you think about this on the level of a virtual choir, right? You appreciate all of these little things that we're doing, and those natural things exist partially because we've literally been doing them since the beginning of our species. Like singing together is something that every culture does, and it goes back tens of thousands of years. The crux of this project for me is seeing how much work it takes to try to imitate the thing that is perfectly natural and easy. Well, not easy, we have to work at it, but like it's much more natural and easy to do in a room. And now in 2020, using all of the technology that we have at our disposal to try to imitate that still obviously falls short of that experience.
Sure.
But like just trying to get there, I found really educational and fascinating.
Yeah. It will change the way that I come to a traditional rehearsal and performance, because you realize what you value most about that experience.
Right.
And it's connected to the music, but it's largely driven by the people that you're doing it with, and that sense of community that's built, and as you said, the expression of humanity in that moment, in sharing your sounds. And that's what's felt the most empty and unfulfilled about the last several weeks, with not having class and not having musicians in a room together. Well, Shawn, thanks again for your willingness to do this project, and for all of your hard work on it, and especially the family effort that it took with you and Abby to get it to where it is, and for the way that we could complete our semester on campus because of it.
So thank you. And again, thank you for asking me to do it in the first place. And I think that we learned a lot.
If we do another one, we'll know a lot more. And I think it can be more, I think we can not only have a different product, but we can even do more for the students in the process too. So let's hope we don't have to use these skills ever again. But if we do, we come into it with more experience.